The wind howled across the crystal peaks of Haven Moor, carrying ice and dust from the distant nebula. Hrothgar sat motionless on his perch, watching the lights of the trade station far below. For 1,000 years had passed since he first claimed this mountain. For 1,000 years of watching, waiting, guarding treasures that no longer mattered to anyone but himself. His scales, once brilliant crimson, had faded to dull copper. His wings, powerful enough to shatter starship hulls, remained folded against his massive body. There was nothing left to fight, no enemies to crush, no territories to conquer. The galaxy had moved on without him. Below, alien species traded goods and shared stories. They built lives filled with purpose while Hrothgar existed in silence. The other Draconians had long since perished in meaningless wars or faded into obscurity. He was among the last, a relic from an age of fire and conquest. Thunder cracked across the sky. Hrothgar lifted his head as a small vessel tumbled through the storm clouds, trailing smoke and spinning wildly. It crashed into the rocks halfway up his mountain, metal screaming against stone. The dragon rose slowly, curiosity breaking through centuries of apathy. He descended the cliff face, his claws finding purchase in cracks worn smooth by time. The ship was a civilian transport, battered and broken. Its cargo bay had split open, spilling wooden crates across the mountainside. Hrothgar approached carefully, expecting weapons or precious metals. Instead, he found toys. Wooden animals lay scattered among the rocks. Stuffed creatures with button eyes stared up at the stormy sky. Colorful blocks spelled out words in a dozen different languages. Hrothgar tilted his massive head, confused by the sight that a groan came from inside the wreckage. The dragon tore away the crumpled metal with one claw, revealing a human male slumped against the pilot's seat. Blood trickled from a gash on his forehead, but his eyes were open and aware. He looked up at Hrothgar without fear. "Thank you," the human said quietly. Hrothgar stared at him. Prey animals usually screamed or begged. This one offered gratitude. "You were injured," Hrothgar observed, his voice like grinding stones. "Nothing fatal." The human unbuckled himself and climbed out carefully, favoring his left leg. He was middle-aged with gray threading through his dark hair. "I'm Oliver. I don't suppose there's shelter nearby? The storm won't pass for days." Hrothgar studied the small creature before him. "You carry toys." "What?" Oliver glanced at his scattered cargo and smiled sadly. "I make them for the colony children. There's settlements across 6 systems that rarely see Earth goods. Handmade toys bring them joy." Joy. Hrothgar tested the word. It felt strange in his mouth. What purpose does joy serve? The human met his gaze steadily. "It makes life worth living." Hrothgar could have laughed, but the concept was too foreign. He had accumulated wealth, defeated enemies, and outlived entire civilizations. None of it had been about joy. None of it had been worth anything at all. "Follow me," Hrothgar said finally. "There are caves below my lair. You may shelter there until your rescue arrives." Oliver gathered what toys he could carry, cradling them like precious artifacts. Hrothgar watched him struggle with the load, then sighed and scooped up 3 crates in one massive claw. "I can manage," Oliver protested. "You're injured and weak." "I am neither. Walk." They made their way up the mountain in silence. The caves Hrothgar indicated were dry and protected from wind. The dragon set down the crates and turned to leave. "Wait," Oliver called. "What's your name?" Hrothgar paused. No one had asked him that in centuries. "Hrothgar, of the Draconian Empire. The empire that fell 1,000 years ago." "Yes." Oliver studied him with new understanding. "You've been alone a long time. Issues solitude. Did you? Or did everything else just disappear while you weren't paying attention?" The words struck deeper than any weapon. Hrothgar said nothing, retreating to the upper chambers where his hoard glittered in the darkness. Gold and jewels, an ancient artifact from dead worlds. He'd spent millennia gathering it all, and now a human carrying wooden toys had made it all feel worthless with a single question point 3 days past. The storm raged on, preventing any rescue attempts. Hrothgar told himself he was only checking on the human to ensure the creature hadn't died in his caves. That would be inconvenient. He found Oliver seated on the cave floor, surrounded by wood shavings. The human had set up a small workspace using salvaged materials from his ship. In his hands, a piece of pale wood was slowly transforming into the shape of a dragon. "What are you doing?" Hrothgar demanded. Oliver didn't startle. "Making toys. It's what I do. You are injured. You should rest." "My hands work fine." Oliver held up the carving. "What do you think? Does it look like you?" Hrothgar leaned closer, examining the small figure. It had wings spread wide and a noble bearing that Hrothgar hadn't possessed in centuries. No dragon looks like that anymore. Maybe not, but children don't know that. When they play with this, they'll imagine dragons as magnificent and strong. They'll create stories about brave creatures who protect the innocent. Oliver smiled. Imagination doesn't require accuracy. It requires inspiration. Hrothgar settled onto his haunches, watching the human work. The movements were precise and practiced. Each cut of the small knife revealed more of the dragon hidden within the wood. "You do this for all the colonies?" Hrothgar asked. "As many as I can reach. There are children on mining stations who've never held a real toy. Kids on research outposts who only see their parents a few hours each week. A simple wooden animal or cloth doll can mean everything to them. And you receive what payment?" Oliver paused in his carving. "Sometimes they trade supplies or fuel. Mostly, I just get letters telling me how much the toys meant. That's enough." Hrothgar couldn't comprehend it. For 1,000 years of living by the principle that power and wealth were everything, and this fragile human was shattering that foundation with wooden toys and quiet words. "Have you ever experienced joy, Hrothgar?" Oliver asked softly. The dragon opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. In 4 millennia of existence, through conquests and victories and the accumulation of vast treasure, he couldn't remember a single moment of true joy. The silence stretched between them until Oliver returned to his carving, and Hrothgar retreated once more to his hoard, seeing it clearly for the first time as exactly what it was: nothing at all. Curiosity was an unfamiliar feeling. Hrothgar had forgotten what it meant to wonder about something beyond his immediate needs. Yet each day, he found himself descending to the lower caves earlier than necessary, drawn by the soft sounds of Oliver's knife against wood. The human had recovered quickly. His leg no longer troubled him, and the cut on his forehead had scabbed over. He worked from dawn until the mountain shadows grew long, surrounded by half-finished creatures and scattered tools. On the 5th day, Hrothgar abandoned all pretense and simply settled near the entrance to watch. Oliver glanced up briefly, smiled, and continued carving what appeared to be a bird. "You may come closer if you wish," Oliver said. "I don't bite. I could swallow you whole without chewing. But you won't. You're too curious about what I'm making." Hrothgar huffed smoke through his nostrils, but moved closer. The bird was taking shape nicely, its wings spread as if caught mid-flight. Oliver's hands moved with confidence, each stroke deliberate and certain. "How do you know where to cut?" Hrothgar asked. "The bird is already inside the wood. I'm just removing everything that isn't bird." Oliver held up the piece, examining it from different angles. "You have to understand the grain, see how the fibers run. Work with the wood, not against it." He set down the bird and picked up a fresh piece of pale timber. "Here, feel this." Hrothgar extended one massive claw. The wood was smooth and light, with subtle lines running lengthwise through it. "See those lines? That's the grain. If you carve along them, the wood cooperates. Fight against them, and it splinters." Oliver demonstrated with a careful cut that peeled away a thin curl of wood. Each piece has its own character. You learn to listen to it. Wood does not speak, not in words, but it tells you things if you pay attention. Oliver offered him the knife. "Would you like to try?" Hrothgar stared at the tiny tool. "My claws would crush it, probably, but I have larger tools in the ship's salvage. I was planning to make handles for them anyway." Oliver set aside his current project and rummaged through a nearby crate. He emerged with several metal blades of various sizes. These were for rough work on larger pieces. They should fit your grip. An hour later, Hrothgar held a modified carving tool that felt absurdly small in his massive claws. Oliver had attached a thick handle wrapped in salvage cable for better grip. The dragon stared at the wood blank before him, uncertain how to begin. Start simple, Oliver advised. Try making a sphere. Just round off the corners bit by bit. Hrothgar's first attempt tore a chunk from the wood. His second scraped too shallow to matter. By his 10th try, he had created something that vaguely resembled a lumpy egg. Excellent progress, Oliver said genuinely. It looks nothing like a sphere. It looks like a first attempt. That's exactly what it should look like. Oliver held up his own early work, a crude animal that might have been a dog or possibly a deformed cat. I made this 20 years ago. Everyone starts somewhere. The dragon examined the misshapen creature. You kept your failures? They're not failures. They're proof that I tried. Proof that I grew. Oliver set it down carefully. Every master was once a disaster. The difference is that masters kept going. Hrothgar looked at his lumpy sphere again. Something small and strange stirred in his chest, like a coal that had forgotten how to burn suddenly finding a spark. He picked up another wood blank. Again, he said. They worked in companionable silence. Oliver carved his bird while Hrothgar struggled with basic shapes. Hours passed unnoticed. The dragon's pile of attempts grew, each one marginally better than the last. Why do you make toys? Hrothgar asked suddenly. You said it brings children joy, but what does it bring you? Oliver set down his knife, considering the question. Peace, I suppose. Purpose. A reason to wake up each day knowing I'll make something that matters. Toys matter. To the children who receive them? Absolutely. Oliver picked up a finished stuffed animal, a soft rabbit with carefully embroidered features. A girl on the Talus colony sleeps with one of my bears every night. Her parents are asteroid miners, gone for weeks at a time. That bear is her comfort when she's scared or lonely. It's not just fabric and stuffing. It's a reminder that someone cares. Hrothgar thought about his hoard upstairs. Millions in precious metals and gems, and none of it had ever comforted anyone. None of it had ever mattered to anyone but himself. I was wealthy once. Oliver continued quietly. I designed products for a major corporation. Toys, yes, but manufactured ones. Made to maximize profit, not meaning. I had everything the galaxy said should make me happy. What changed? My daughter got sick. Very sick. Medicine couldn't help her. Oliver's hands stilled on the rabbit. In her last months, the only things that brought her any peace were the simple toys I made by hand. Not the expensive manufactured ones. Not the ones with lights and sounds. Just wooden animals and cloth dolls that I carved and sewed while sitting beside her bed. The cave fell silent except for the distant howl of wind. After she died, I looked at my life and realized I'd spent years making profitable things when I could have been making meaningful things. So I changed. Oliver mit Rothkirschgesch. I gave away most of my wealth. Kept enough for materials and ship maintenance. Started traveling to places that needed what I could offer. You gave away your treasure. Hrothgar couldn't hide his shock. It was never really treasure. Just numbers and accounts, things in storage. It didn't belong to anyone. Didn't mean anything. Oliver held up the rabbit. This belongs to a child who will love it. That makes it priceless. Hrothgar looked at his rough attempts scattered around him. Wooden lumps that barely resembled anything. But he had made them. With his own claws, he had created something that hadn't existed before. For 4,000 years, he had only taken, conquered, claimed, hoarded. Never once had he built something meant to bring another creature happiness. Teach me more, Hrothgar said. Oliver smiled. I thought you'd never ask. 9 days had passed since the crash. The storm had finally broken, revealing clear skies and distant stars. A rescue ship would arrive within hours. Hrothgar had watched Oliver pack his salvage tools with something uncomfortably close to regret. The human had taught him much in those days. How to read wood grain and choose pieces that would resist splitting. How to sand rough edges until they felt smooth as glass. How to paint details with brushes made from his own shed scales. Hrothgar's cave floor was now covered with wooden animals, crude but recognizable. You're a natural, Oliver said, examining a carved fish Hrothgar had completed that morning. Most people take months to achieve this level of detail. I have had 4,000 years to develop precision. I simply never applied it to creation before. Hrothgar picked up a small wooden dragon, one of his better pieces. What happens to these now? That depends. What do you want to happen to them? Hrothgar had no answer. He had made them because the act of creation had filled something hollow inside him. But now they sat useless, gathering dust in a cave no one would ever visit. Oliver settled onto a rock, his packed bags at his feet. Can I tell you about some of the children I delivered to? If you wish. There's a mining colony on Talos 9. 16 families, mostly human, with a few Valorians mixed in. The children there have never seen an ocean or a forest. They live in pressurized domes, breathing recycled air. Their parents work 12-hour shifts in dangerous conditions. Oliver picked up one of Hrothgar's wooden fish. A child there named Danny collects my ocean creature carvings. He's never seen a real fish, but he's memorized everything about them. He tells the other kids stories about swimming in Earth's seas. Hrothgar listened, watching the human's face light up with the memory. Then there's the research station orbiting the black hole in Sector 7. 3 families live there, collecting data that won't be analyzed for decades. A girl named Sophia has one of my puzzle boxes. She solved it hundreds of times, but she says it helps her think. Helps her remember that someone out there knows she exists. You remember all their names. Every single one. Because they're not just customers or recipients. They're the reason I do this. Oliver set down the fish. Each toy carries a message. It says you matter. You're worth the time it took to make this. Someone thinks about you, even across the vastness of space. Hrothgar looked at his creations with new understanding. They weren't just objects. They were connections waiting to happen. Could I send them to your colonies? He asked quietly. That Oliver's expression brightened. You want to donate them? I have no use for them. And you speak of children who might. Hrothgar paused, struggling with unfamiliar feelings. You said each toy carries a message. What message would mine carry? That even the oldest, most isolated beings can still care, can still create, can still reach out. Oliver stood and placed a hand on Hrothgar's massive claw. That's powerful, Hrothgar. That matters more than you know. The dragon stared at the small hand on his scales. Such a fragile gesture, yet it carried more weight than any treaty or threat he had ever encountered. A bright light appeared in the sky, growing larger. The rescue ship was approaching. Oliver gathered his belongings quickly. I need to ask you something before I go. Why did you help me? You could have left me in that wreckage. Hrothgar considered the question. I do not know. Perhaps I was curious. Perhaps I was simply tired of being alone. And now I'm less alone. And that is strange. Oliver laughed, a warm sound that echoed through the caves. Strange in a good way, I hope. I have not decided yet. The rescue ship landed on a flat area below the caves. Its crew called out for Oliver, their voices carrying on the thin air. Oliver shouldered his pack and turned to face Hrothgar fully. Thank you for sheltering me, and for learning with me. You have real talent. He pulled something from his pocket, a small package wrapped in cloth. I made this for you, a gift between craftsmen. Hrothgar carefully unwrapped it to find a wooden dragon, far more detailed than the one Oliver had carved days ago. This one sat peacefully, wings folded, with wise eyes that seemed almost alive. That's who you could be, Oliver said softly. Not a warrior or a hoarder, just someone at peace with himself. Hrothgar had no words. He simply held the small carving, feeling its weight in his claw. Oliver reached into another pocket and pulled out a larger bundle. These are tools, size for your claws. And this journal. If you ever make something you're proud of, write to me at this address. He pointed to coordinates written inside the journal's cover. I would love to see how you progress. You believe I will continue. I know you will. I saw how you looked when you finished that fish this morning. That's not the look of someone who plans to stop. The rescue crew was getting impatient, calling more urgently. Oliver waved at them, then looked back at Hrothgar one last time. Joy is a choice, Hrothgar. For 4,000 years, you chose power and solitude. You can choose differently now. You can choose to matter in ways that last beyond conquest and gold. Then he was gone, climbing down the mountain path toward the waiting ship. Hrothgar watched until the vessel lifted off, became a bright point of light, and finally vanished among the stars. The dragon stood alone in his caves, surrounded by wooden animals and the tools of a trade he had never imagined learning. His hoard glittered in the chamber above. Suddenly feeling like a tomb rather than a treasure, he looked at the wooden dragon Oliver had given him. At peace with himself. What would that even feel like? Hrothgar picked up his carving tools and a fresh piece of wood. There was only one way to find out that he began to carve, and for the first time in 4,000 years, the mountain didn't feel quite so empty. 6 months had transformed everything. The upper chambers of Hrothgar's lair no longer held just treasure. Wood shavings covered the ancient stone floors. Tools hung on walls that once displayed weapons. The scent of fresh-cut timber had replaced the musty smell of undisturbed gold. Hrothgar worked through the nights, learning by trial and error. His claws had adapted to the delicate movements required for fine detail. His eyes, once used as spotting enemies at vast distances, now focused on grain patterns and joint alignments. He had sent his first shipment to Oliver 3 months ago. 12 wooden animals, carefully packed and addressed to various colonies. The weight of uncertainty had been crushing. What if they were too crude? What if the children rejected gifts from an ancient dragon they had never met? The first letter arrived 2 weeks later. Hrothgar had stared at the small envelope for an hour before opening it. Inside, written in careful childish letters, was a message from Danny on Talus 9. Dear Dragon Toymaker, thank you for the fish. I named him Splash. He sits on my bed and I tell him about the ocean even though neither of us have seen it. My dad says you're very old and very wise. I think you're very nice. Thank you. Your friend, Danny. Hrothgar had read it 17 times. Then he carved another fish, even better than the first, and sent it with a note. For Splash to have a friend. Hrothgar. More letters came. From Sophia with the puzzle box. From children on stations and colonies whose names Hrothgar learned by heart. Each one thanked him. Each one shared small pieces of their lives. Each one called him friend. The dragon had started a careful journal, documenting which child received which toy. He noted their preferences, their stories, their struggles. A boy who loved starships received a detailed model with movable wings. A girl recovering from illness got a soft cloth doll that could survive endless hugging. Hrothgar discovered he had opinions about things he had never considered before. He learned which woods held paint best, which joinery techniques survived rough play, how to balance educational value with pure enjoyment. The knowledge accumulated like treasure, but this treasure grew richer with use rather than gathering dust. His hoard had shrunk considerably. He traded gold for rare woods from across the galaxy. Gems became fabric dyes. Ancient artifacts were exchanged for tools and materials. Each transaction felt like shedding dead weight. The communication system chimed, startling him from his work. Oliver's face appeared on the small screen. Hrothgar, I hoped I'd catch you. How's the crafting going? The dragon held up a mechanical toy he had been assembling. A small dragon with wings that actually flapped when wound. Complex, but satisfying. The gear ratios are challenging. Oliver laughed. You've come so far. I have something to tell you, though. It's important. Hrothgar set down his work, focusing completely on the screen. There's a children's hospital on Breslin Moon. It specializes in terminal cases, kids who won't make it home. Oliver's expression grew serious. They've requested toys. Lots of them. The children there don't have much time, and the staff wants to make their remaining days as bright as possible. The dragon felt something cold settle in his chest. What is the purpose of bringing joy to those who will die? I asked myself that once. Oliver leaned forward. My daughter taught me the answer. She knew her time was limited, but she chose to spend it experiencing happiness anyway. She played, she laughed, she loved. Every moment of joy was a victory. A victory against what? Against despair. Against the darkness that wants us to give up. Oliver's voice was gentle but firm. Joy doesn't become less meaningful because it's temporary. Maybe it becomes more meaningful. Maybe choosing happiness in the face of certain loss is the bravest thing anyone can do. Hrothgar thought about his 4,000 years. He had lived through ages, survived when others perished, accumulated wealth beyond measure. And until 6 months ago, he had felt nothing but emptiness. These children would live brief lives, but fill them with more meaning than he had managed in millennia. When do they need the toys? Hrothgar asked. As soon as possible. But Hrothgar, this is an obligation. If it's too difficult, I will make them. The dragon's voice was firm. Tell me about the children. Their names, their interests, everything you know. Oliver smiled, relief evident on his face. I'll send you the files. There are 43 patients currently, ages ranging from 3 to 16. Mix of species, various conditions. 43 individual toys. I will need 3 weeks. That's ambitious. I am an ancient dragon with nothing but time and a workshop full of materials. I will manage. They talked for another hour, Oliver sharing details about each child. Hrothgar took careful notes, his mind already designing specific pieces for specific needs. A music box for a girl who could no longer speak but loved melodies. A tactile puzzle for a boy losing his vision. A soft companion for a child who spent most days in pain. After the call ended, Hrothgar looked at his workspace with new understanding. This wasn't just a hobby anymore. This was purpose. Real, tangible purpose that affected lives directly. He selected his finest woods and began planning. Each child would receive something unique, something that spoke to who they were as individuals. Not generic toys, but personal gifts that said someone had listened, had cared enough to create something specifically for them. 3 days into the project, another letter arrived. This one from a child named Lily at Breslin Hospital. Someone had told her a dragon was making toys for the patients. Dear Dragon, I am 7 and I am sick. The doctors say I won't get better. I'm not scared because my mom is here and she holds my hand. But I get bored sometimes. If you make me a toy, could it be a dragon like you? I've never met a real dragon. Your friend, Lily. Hrothgar set the letter down carefully. His claws trembled slightly as he selected a piece of the finest golden wood he owned. It had been part of his hoard for 2,000 years, saved for no particular reason. Now it had a reason that he began to carve, and with each cut, something inside him shifted. Not just curiosity anymore, not just interest in a new skill. This was something deeper, something that hurt and healed at the same time. This was caring, and it was terrifying, and it was absolutely necessary. The transport ship that carried Hrothgar to Breslin Moon was designed for cargo, not passengers, and certainly not for ancient dragons. He folded himself into the hold, wings tucked tight, surrounded by crates containing 43 individually crafted toys. Each one represented hours of work, careful thought, and something he was still learning to name. Oliver met him at the landing platform. The human looked older than Hrothgar remembered, but his smile was genuine. I wasn't sure you'd actually come, Oliver said. The toys require delivery. I am delivering them. You could have shipped them. Hrothgar was silent. The truth was he needed to see where they would go. Needed to understand the children who had written to him. Needed to face whatever he was feeling about mortality and meaning and the terrible weight of caring about fragile beings. Breslin Children's Hospital was built into the moon's surface, protected from radiation and temperature extremes. Its corridors were painted in bright colors, but they couldn't hide the underlying purpose. This was a place where children came to die as comfortably as possible. The medical director, a Valorian named Dr. Sean, greeted them with cautious optimism. The children are excited to meet you, but some are very ill. Please be gentle. I am always gentle with the young, Hrothgar said, and was surprised to find it true. They led him to a courtyard open to the dome above. Synthetic sunlight filtered through, warming the space. Beds and chairs were arranged in small clusters. And everywhere, children. Some were bald from treatments. Others were thin and pale. A few were missing limbs. Many had tubes and monitors attached to their small bodies. But they all turned to look when Hrothgar entered, their eyes wide with wonder and fear in equal measure. Hrothgar sat down slowly, making himself as small and non-threatening as possible. The children watched him. He watched them back. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Then a small voice asked, "Are you really the dragon, Toymaker?" Hrothgar located the speaker. A girl, perhaps 7 years old, completely bald with dark circles under her eyes. She held a blanket clutched to her chest. I am Rothgar. I make toys. So yes, I suppose I am. I am Luli. I wrote to you. Something caught in Rothgar's throat. This was the child who had asked for a dragon toy, who wasn't scared of dying because her mother held her hand, who got bored sometimes. I made something for you, he said quietly. Would you like to see it? Lily nodded eagerly. Oliver brought over one of the crates and carefully removed a package wrapped in soft cloth. He handed it to Rothgar, who offered it to Lily with a gentleness that would have shocked his younger self. She unwrapped it slowly, then gasped. The wooden dragon was golden, its wings spread wide, its expression wise and kind. It was exactly Lily's size, perfect for hugging or displaying. We can make it together, Rothgar said, if you would like. I brought the materials to build something new. Lily climbed down from her bed, dragging her force stand with her. She settled beside Rothgar, her tiny hands touching his massive claw with complete trust. Can we make another dragon? A friend for this one? We can make whatever you wish. Other children began to approach, slowly at first, then with growing confidence. A boy asked about the mechanical toys. A girl wanted to know if Rothgar could really breathe fire. A small child simply climbed into his lap and fell asleep. Rothgar found himself surrounded by curious, brave, dying children. And something inside him broke open. He spent the day teaching them how to select wood, how to feel the grain, how to make simple cuts safely under supervision. The medical staff watched nervously at first, but Rothgar's patience was infinite. He guided small hands, offered encouragement, celebrated every tiny success. Lily worked beside him for hours, her focus absolute despite her obvious fatigue. Together, they created a smaller dragon, less refined than Rothgar's work, but full of her personality. She painted it bright purple with silver spots. His name is Spark, she announced. He's your dragon's best friend. Then my dragon needs a name too, Rothgar said. You should name him. He's yours. Rothgar looked at the golden dragon, then at the child who had brought him to this place. His name is Hope, because that is what you gave me when you wrote your letter. Lily hugged him, her small arms barely reaching around his foreleg. Thank you for coming to visit us. The day faded into evening. Parents arrived to sit with their children. Rothgar distributed the toys he had brought, watching each child's face light up with delight. A music box for a girl who couldn't speak, but who hummed along with its melody. A tactile puzzle for a boy who traced its shapes with trembling fingers. A soft companion for a child in pain, who held it close and finally relaxed. Oliver found him in the courtyard after most of the children had been taken back to their rooms. Rothgar sat alone, staring at the artificial stars above. That was remarkable, Oliver said softly. They are dying. Yes, and I made them toys. Temporary things for temporary lives. Rothgar's voice was rough. What purpose does it serve? Did you see their faces? Yes. Did you see how Lily looked to Hope? How she held Spark like it was made of starlight? Oliver sat beside him. Those moments of joy are not less real because they're brief. They're more precious because they're rare. She will die, Oliver. Perhaps soon. And my toys cannot prevent that. No, but they can give her happiness in the meantime. They can remind her that someone cares, that someone took the time to create something beautiful specifically for her. Oliver placed a hand on Rothgar's scales. You gave her more than a toy today. You gave her dignity, attention, love, love. The word hung in the air like a foreign concept. I barely know her, Rothgar protested weakly. Love doesn't require time. It requires choice. You chose to care. You chose to create. You chose to be here when you could have stayed in your safe mountain. Oliver smiled. That's love, Rothgar. That's what you've been learning all along. The dragon closed his eyes. For 1,000 years of existence, and he was only now understanding what it meant to truly live, to truly feel, to truly matter. It hurts, he whispered. Yes, that's how you know it's real. Rothgar never returned to his mountain. Within a week of his first visit to Breslin, he had arranged to convert one of the hospital's unused storage facilities into a workshop. Within a month, He had moved his essential belongings and donated the remainder of his hoard to the hospital's medical fund. The gold that had gathered dust for millennia would now purchase treatments, medicines, and comfort for dying children. He saw no irony in the transformation, only rightness. The workshop became the heart of his new existence. Each morning, he would review the patient list with Dr. Sean, learning about new arrivals and their specific needs. Each afternoon, he would work in the courtyard with any children healthy enough to join him. Each evening, he would craft personalized toys for those too ill to leave their beds. Lily became his constant companion when her strength allowed. She would sit beside him for hours, sometimes working on her own projects, sometimes simply talking. She told him about her life before the hospital, about her friends at school, about the puppy she'd had to leave behind. "Do you miss your old home?" she asked one day, paint smudged across her cheek. Rothgar considered the question while sanding a wooden starship. "I thought I would. But that mountain was just a place to exist. This is a place to live. What's the difference? Existing is breathing and waiting. Living is caring and creating and connecting." He set down the starship and looked at her directly. "You taught me that." Lily smiled, but it was tired. She had been declining slowly over the past weeks. The medical staff spoke in hushed tones about timelines and comfort measures. Rothgar heard it all and continued working, because stopping would mean acknowledging what was coming. 3 months after his arrival, Lily was moved to palliative care. The treatments had stopped working. She had weeks at most, perhaps only days. Rothgar brought his tools to her room and set up a small workspace beside her bed. "We should finish that project you started." The toy chest with the carved lid. Lily's mother, who rarely left her daughter's side, smiled gratefully. "She's been asking about it." They worked together slowly. Lily could only manage a few minutes at a time before exhaustion claimed her, but she insisted on helping. Her small hands guided Rothgar's claws through the delicate detail work on the lid, a scene of dragons and children playing among stars. "Will you stay here?" Lily asked one afternoon, her voice barely above a whisper. "After I'm gone?" Rothgar's claws stilled. "If the hospital will have me, the other kids need you. Promise you'll keep making toys for them." "I promise. And promise you'll remember me. Not just because I'm sick, but because I was your friend." Rothgar set down his tools and very carefully touched her hand with one claw. "Lily, I am 4,000 years old. I have witnessed the rise and fall of empires. I have seen stars born and die. I will remember you until my last breath. And not because you were sick, because you showed me what it means to choose joy even when facing darkness. Because you gave me purpose when I had none. Because you called me friend when I deserved nothing." Lily smiled, tears sliding down her thin cheeks. "You're a good dragon, Rothgar. You are a remarkable human, Lily." She passed away 3 days later, in the early morning, holding her mother's hand on one side and clutching Hope, her golden dragon, on the other. Spark, the purple dragon she had made with Rothgar, sat on her bedside table watching over her. Rothgar learned what grief felt like. It was crushing and consuming and entirely different from anything in his long existence. Oliver found him in the workshop, surrounded by half-finished projects, unable to work. "I should not have cared," Rothgar said. "I should have kept my distance. Would you take it back? If you could choose not to have known her, would you?" The dragon thought about Lily's laugh, the way she painted without fear of making mistakes, how she had trusted him instantly despite his fearsome appearance, the pure joy on her face when they finished projects together. "No," he whispered. "I would not trade knowing her for anything. Then the pain is the price we pay for love. And it's worth it." The hospital held a memorial service. Children who could attend shared stories. Parents thanked Rothgar for the time he had given their daughter, and Rothgar stood silently, holding the toy chest they had made together, now finished and polished to perfection. That Lily's mother approached him afterward. "She wanted you to have this." She handed him a letter, sealed with a purple wax stamp in the shape of a dragon. Rothgar waited until he was alone to read it. "Dear Rothgar, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, but that's okay. I'm not scared. I wanted to thank you for being my friend. You made my last day special. You show me that big, scary things can be gentle and kind. Please keep making toys. Please keep helping the other kids. Please keep choosing to live instead of just exist. You are the best dragon in the galaxy. Your forever friend, Lily. At the bottom, she had drawn a picture of them working together in the courtyard, surrounded by wooden animals and happiness. Rothgar placed the letter in the toy chest, next to the tools Lily had used. Then he returned to his workshop and began to craft. Years passed. Rothgar became a fixture at Breslin Hospital. Children came and went, some recovering, many not. Each one received his attention, his care, his carefully crafted toys. He learned their names, their stories, their dreams. He taught them to create. He gave them moments of joy and purpose. The galaxy eventually learned about the dragon toymaker of Breslin. Other hospitals requested his work. He trained volunteers, sharing his knowledge freely. A network of toy makers emerged, all inspired by an ancient dragon who had discovered that the greatest treasure was not gold or power, but connection. Oliver visited regularly, always bringing new woods and materials. They would work side by side, two craftsmen who had found meaning in creation. "Do you ever regret it?" Oliver asked one day. "Giving up your old life?" Rothgar looked around the courtyard where a dozen children were crafting their own projects under his guidance. Laughter echoed off the dome above. Paint and wood shavings covered everything. It was chaotic and messy and absolutely perfect. "I regret waiting 4,000 years to start living," he said, "but I do not regret a single moment since." An elderly dragon now, his scales faded to pale copper, Rothgar sat in his workshop surrounded by children and toys and purpose. He thought of Lily often and all the others who had passed through his life too briefly. Their memories didn't hurt less with time, but the pain had become bearable, even precious, because pain meant he had loved, and love meant he had lived. For the first time in his impossibly long existence, Rothgar understood joy. Not the temporary pleasure of conquest or acquisition, but the deep, abiding joy of making a difference, of mattering to someone, of choosing every single day to create light in dark places. That he picked up his tools and began a new project, humming a melody Lily had taught him years ago. Around him, children worked and played and lived their brief, brilliant lives, and the dragon toymaker smiled.